Hi, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Ebb and Glow podcast. Today, I'm going to do something a little bit different than normal, and it's just going to be a solo episode. So, just me. The reason why I wanted to do something like this is the majority of my podcast so far has been stories of everyone else, and it got me thinking that a lot of people who probably listen to this podcast know nothing about me. I think I'm such an extrovert. Well, I am a very extroverted person, but when I really think about what I tell people about my life and what I reveal, I guess I'm a pretty private person. So I figured that this was a really great way to give people a little bit more insight into who I am, what my story is, what has kind of gone on in my life in the past year, and also, most importantly, what am I struggling with today? I'm sure you can see from a lot of my episodes, a lot of my guests they're telling stories that they've already been through it. They recovered through the grief and through the internal struggles that they have. But the interesting thing is, the reason why I started this podcast is no one talks about the struggles that they're going through recently. No one talks about how hard it is going through the things they're going through, and everyone kind of just puts on a brave face. So then we give everyone else false hope into just thinking everyone's life is perfect, and it's completely not. Please, for the love of God, please know that no one's life is what they put on Instagram. It's the highlight reel, everyone. It is the highlight reel. So I figured if I keep stressing that people need to be talking about what they're going through, then the first step is for me to kind of walk that walk and start talking about in real time what I'm struggling with. And I'll be totally transparent and vulnerable here. While I was writing notes for this podcast, just to kind of give myself a little bit of structure, I was starting to tear up and starting to think about what has kind of gone on in the past year, what I'm currently struggling with day in, day out. And it got me choked up a little bit. So it's going to be hard to even get through this solo episode to kind of tell people what's going on. All to say, there's nothing traumatic or crazy happening in my life as of now, like nothing big in terms of trauma or hardship. But again, that is, and there's so much struggle and traumatic events happening in the world as we speak, and I definitely do not want to diminish them, but anything that you're going through today, as little as having an argument with your manager, or as big as learning someone in your family is going through a health issue, whatever it is that you're going through, you need to validate that for yourself. You need to understand that anything that you're going through, no matter how big or small in comparison of someone else, it's huge for you, and it's what you're currently dealing with. So just give yourself some of that validation to be able to understand that it's okay to feel this way. It's okay to go through struggle, and we're all doing it. So I recently had a birthday, my second birthday in lockdown. I'm sure a lot of April babies feel the same way. We made the absolute best of it, but it's still a lockdown. 2 years in a row. The little princess in me was a little upset, but then there's another huge side of me that I get so stressed out with parties, so it was so nice just to do something super low key. Where I'm going with this is I recently turned 28. And I love to say that I'm in a new bucket is what I like to call it. So I see the ages of 24, 25, and 26 as a bucket. And I also see the ages as 27, 28, and 29 as like a new bucket. So last year I turned 27. So I jumped into what I like to call this new bucket. So I'm in the middle year of this bucket. If this makes sense to you, let me know. But I just find that the years of 24, 25, and 26, there's so much that happens in those 3 years, but those 3 years are very similar in terms of the types of struggles and the life changes and the life lessons that you're learning. And then I find 27, 28, 29, well, I don't know 29, but 27 and 28 so far, whole different ball game and a whole different level of stresses and struggles and lessons and, So I wanted to take the first half of this episode so I did a lot of reflecting on my whole year as a 27-year-old. A lot of changes and a lot of things happened in my life in the age of 27. So as I turned 28 a few weeks ago, I really sat down and kind of reflected on the past year, and wow, a lot has happened. And I mean, I'm sure a lot of my close friends don't even know kind of what was going on in my head, the changes that were happening, maybe behind the scenes. So I just want to use this episode to give some highlights and some low times of the past year, and just want to highlight the main lessons that I learned throughout the past year. And maybe I'll touch on what I want to take into this upcoming year. And then later in the episode, like I said earlier, I will tell you kind of what's going on today and this week and this past month and the struggles that I'm dealing with right now. So anyways, let's get to it. The biggest lesson I learned at the beginning of last year, that it probably took until the middle of 2020 to realize that lesson, is around the whole idea that the doors that are closing are the doors that are not meant for you. The ones that are meant for you will open without any hesitation and without any force. And what I mean by that is, I'm sure a lot of people have maybe applied for jobs or have gone on dates, and you come back after the job interview or the date and you're like, this is the job for me. Like, this is exactly what I was looking for. Or you come off a first date. I feel like a lot of girls do this. I mean, I've done it before. And you're already like, I like to call it emotionally masturbating. Sorry to anyone who's not familiar with that term, but you leave the first date emotionally masturbating your whole life together. And all of a sudden that job interview doesn't call you back, or the date, they never text you back, and it leaves you so rejected, not understanding what happened and really internalizing that it's a you problem. We get so caught up in who and what rejects us, and we never, I mean, I've struggled with this before. We fail to see that these people are leaving our lives, or these jobs are exiting our lives, or not coming into our lives, because there's so many other better things that are in store for us. I can say the woo-woo term of trust the process, trust the universe has your back. And it sounds so silly, but there's so much truth in it. So my story around that, of what happened to me last year, for anyone who doesn't know this, I actually got laid off last February, so February 2020, pre-pandemic. So any of my friends or anyone I knew that were going through the pandemic loss, my heart went out to them, because it happened to me just a month before. And ultimately, I was very thankful for that layoff. I remember going into that day just kind of bored, annoyed, and I just went in starting that morning with a migraine. And I wasn't even in there long enough to take my jacket off, and I don't even remember if I had a sip of the coffee that I brought in. And all of a sudden, my boss was bringing me in, and I was getting laid off. Ultimately, the company I was working with didn't get their funding at that time, or as early as they needed to be able to keep paying us all. So a lot of us got laid off, unfortunately. I remember leaving that day, and I went to my roommate at the time. She always worked out of WeWork because she's an entrepreneur. And so I texted her, I was like this happened. And thankfully, she's so fantastic. She texted me back and just said, oh my God, that's crazy. Like, I'm so sorry. Come to WeWork, just like hang out here, like get what you need to get done. Just come. So I remember leaving the office that day and meeting my roommate at WeWork. And I remember the moment I got to WeWork, maybe 20, 25 minutes, half an hour later, my migraine was gone. All of my back pain was gone. And it just goes to show how much stress I was probably bringing in to that job every single day, and just not loving it. And there's so many things about that job. I mean, I made a lot of great friends there, made a lot of great connections, but ultimately it wasn't meant for me. I was pretty upset, although I felt a little relieved. I was pretty upset. I mean, I didn't have an income anymore. Like, that's pretty scary. I live in probably the most expensive city in Canada, and when you lose a job, it's tough. And it's about 5 seconds of relief at first, but then then it hits you. Oh shit. Like, how am I going to pay rent? How am I going to, let alone save or invest? Like, how am I going to pay rent? What do I tell my parents? What do I tell my friends? You take on so much of the shame. The shame is the perfect word for it. You leave feeling full of shame. It's as simple as that. I remember I let myself grieve probably for a few days, just kind of sorting out like what happened, where did I go wrong, what's my next move. Thankfully, I had a bit of severance from the job, so it bought me some time. But after a few days, I honestly got right back on the horse. And this is not to put pressure on anyone to feel the need to kind of get back into it, but I still had a bit of a fire in me. Keep in mind, this is pre-pandemic, so the world wasn't going crazy just yet. So for me, I was like, okay, I got a couple weeks. I got to get another job. So I started interviewing right away. My thought process at the time was, okay, so I'm already doing my real estate courses. So why not start working at a brokerage, maybe in marketing, maybe as an assistant, but I should at least be around that world if I'm planning on going into real estate as an agent within the next year. So I applied, I was interviewing like crazy. I got job offers, I got lots of interviews. I met some great connections actually with agents who I've done deals with now or almost did deals with. And it was such a learning process to realize like, you got to check your ego at the door. You know, it's sometimes you have to go right back to the drawing board, career-wise even, because I knew whatever next move I made, it was probably going to be temporary, as I knew I was going to go into real estate eventually anyways. But that didn't mean I wasn't going to put my all into any role I did. It was just going to be maybe a transitionary time. Ultimately, I did get a job offer for a job that I was very excited about. And the day I got my letter of acceptance for like all the paperwork that I had to sign was the day that basically the world shut down. I remember getting a call or an email, I forgot what it was. So this was like mid-March of last year, basically saying like, hey, Jenelle, like, yes, we offered you the job, but we kind of can't go through with it because we're closing our doors on Monday and we don't know what the hell is going on. I remember after that call, of course I understood, like they can't give me a job. They may have to lay people off, let alone hire new people. And I remember getting off that phone call or email or reading the email, I forget what it was, and I was just devastated. So keep in mind, this is about a month after I got laid off at the previous job. So a month of emotions and cycles and interviews and you know that cycle. And finally seeing the light at the end of the tunnel, being like, yay, I figured it out. My severance is just about to end right before the new job starts. So I thought everything was figured out. I felt really good about the changes. And yeah, that was probably one of the times I cried the most in 2020, but I was so devastated. And I felt like I just got the wind knocked out of me and pushed right back down. And maybe it's the nature of knowing that we're like all offices were going to start closing. There was so much uncertainty in the world. There was such a lack of control that I felt. And when I don't feel in control, that's when I get really upset. When I don't feel like I have a control of the situation, and especially when I don't have control of my own destiny or future, that's when I really crumble. Wow, I'm giving everyone my deep, dark secrets here. So like I said, I felt so devastated. I cried so much. I didn't know what to do. It was very unclear what the next step was in my personal life, but also because there was so much uncertainty happening in the world. Yeah, dark place. I ended up going on unemployment for about month and a half maybe. I forget. But I started a new role that May that I got connected with through a friend. And it was a great role. I got to meet a lot more people, cool experiences. Obviously, it has its own ups and downs, but ultimately it was good. And I was very grateful to have a job that I could bring a lot of expertise to the table. I could also learn a lot. I was working with really smart, great people. And yeah, it was good. I was just happy to kind of get back out there, get a bit more sense of routine, purpose, as lame as that sounds, but purpose. I find, and maybe this is not everyone, but I find when I'm not working or don't have a project, and maybe that's just my personality type, like I feel a lack of purpose. So I know during that time when I was unemployed, it was a slow period. Now, keep in mind, I'm still a very ambitious person. So while going through all of that sadness, I read a lot. I think I read like 9 books in like 6 weeks, like 6-week timeline. It was amazing. And now I compare this year to last year, and I don't even know if I have 3 books read yet this year. It's such a contrast, to say the least. But anyways, I mean, a year later, I'm way more happy in my career. I think back to if that job offer ended up panning out, my life would look very different, and I don't think I would be as happy. So in hindsight, I'm glad how it all panned out. But during that time, it was dark. Lesson number 2 that I learned a lot during the age of 27, so in the past year, is people in your life will come and go. Those who are meant to stay will stay, and it will be so effortless. Those who are not meant to be in your life, let them go. It's crazy for me to say that because when I think about the last year, I had a lot of friendship changes just within my network, within my close friends. New people came into my life. People who I was very close with exited my life. And it hurt me a lot. I'll just say that. I still kind of don't know what happened, but I've kind of just like, when I reflect back on the past year, I mean, it is what it is. You can't force people to want to be friends with you. You can't force people to stay in your life. Ultimately, if someone doesn't want to be somewhere, you just got to let them go. And it took me a long time to recognize that, but I think I feel at peace with that. I still believe that friendships, the real good friendships, the deep friendships that'll be in your life for the rest of your life, there will be some ebbs and flows in those friendships. And I strongly believe that if you have a friendship that especially women, if you have a friendship that you've never really gotten in an argument with or a disagreement, I don't know how close you really are. Getting upset with each other or having disagreements or arguments, I think it really brings you closer because you see that it can get bad, and if 2 people are willing to fight and fix it and say I'm sorry and own up to their wrongs in the situation, I think those cracks in the friendship will ultimately help grow into a stronger friendship. So yeah, when I look back at a lot of my friendship changes, I mean, I was friends with people that I would see very frequently, and maybe it's just the nature of the pandemic. I haven't seen like any of those people, and some of them I haven't seen that I still strongly want to be friends with, and I can't wait until things are a little bit normal so we can start getting together in groups and whatnot. But some people that I lost touch with, I guess, I don't know, maybe we were just friends by association, and that's okay as well. But I think the past year really gave me a better outlook on what friendship means, what I need from friendships, what I should be doing better in my friendships. And yeah, I mean, I learned a lot. So overall, that lesson, people in your life will come and go. Those who are meant to stay will stay, and it will be so effortless. But the people who are trying to leave your life, just let them. Don't fight for it. Don't force it back. And the friendships that are meant to stay, mend them, say I'm sorry, and yeah, like fix it. Just fix it. Lesson 3 of the past year is all about how success doesn't always mean hard work. I strongly think that success in your life, whether it's achievement or money, it should come very easy. And what I mean by that, and I've spoke about this on previous episodes and other episodes that I've been interviewed on, because it's something that I strongly believe and have realized in the past year, is that if you ultimately want success in your life, maybe career, maybe money, just it should come very easy. And how it comes easy is start leaning into your innate skills. And what I mean by that is, what do you do so effortlessly that people compliment you on, that you think is kind of laughable, and it's so natural to you and it comes so naturally that you seriously think that everyone else has that skill. You think everyone is good at that. But no, it is you. That is your skill. That is your special quality. And you need to start thinking about how that skill transcribes into a job, into a role, into a task, and lean into that skill so immensely that that is what you do for a career. Isn't that crazy? For example, real estate was not always the plan. It was always in the back of my mind, but I just didn't know enough about it in terms of, I didn't really know many realtors. I didn't understand it in Toronto. Never ever thought that that was really an option. I mean, I did a commerce degree, so I didn't know that I could also go that route. I thought I was in this corporate startup tech world for the rest of my career. But within that career, I just always felt like a bit of an outsider. People I worked with are going to listen to this and just laugh and I'm sure think, wait, what? But yeah, I just always felt like a little black sheep sometimes. And I think I always found myself in startup environments because there's such an entrepreneurial aspect that not much red tape. You do as much as you can do. You work hard and the numbers show for it. You can get things done really quickly without getting many approvals. People trust you. So I loved all of that. But as companies grow, a lot of that goes away. And I found myself craving that entrepreneurial spirit, that autonomy a lot more. And when I really thought about it, I thought, what are my innate skills? And for me, it is anything client facing. So now, and again, hindsight's 2020, but now I see it in full force every day when I'm working, where if I'm out with a client showing a property or just interacting with them on the phone, the time goes so quickly. It doesn't feel like work. And this is where you need to start looking at your current career or your current job and lean into the times where time just passes and all of a sudden 3 hours are gone by. What were you doing during those 3 hours? And I like to call that, and I've learned this term in the past year, is that's your zone of genius. What can you do better than everyone else where time just slips by? And while you were doing that task, it did not feel like work. And if someone could pay you for that for the rest of your life, you would almost laugh and think, wait, you'd pay me for that? That could be my job? You're so good at it and it comes so naturally that you don't think you should get paid for it. I could go on about this for so long, but just start thinking about that. In your 9 to 5 or during your day of working, what is your favorite part of that job? And you need to start doing more of that and less of the stuff that you hate. That's one of the biggest lessons that I've learned. I'm still working through that because there's still a lot of real estate that I don't love, and I would eventually like to offload it to someone else so that I can focus on the parts that I do love, but that'll come in time. I think the first step is recognizing what you're really, 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 really good at and start leaning into that. And I think you'll realize that success comes a lot easier once you do that. Lesson number 4, and it's one thing that I kind of always knew, but it really showed a lot in the past year of my life, and that is relationships are a true mirror into what you need to work on. Let that sink in for a bit. So you've probably felt this in the past with relationships, that relationships are brought into your life, especially romantic relationships, are brought into your life to be a true mirror reflection on the parts that you don't like about yourself, the parts that you're hiding and don't have the courage to show to the world, the parts that you haven't figured out from your last relationship and haven't fixed up. Any problem that you're going through in your relationship or any struggle that's coming up is a mirror reflection on what you need to work on internally. And let me be clear that I am not an expert at this. I am just realizing it and still not often doing anything about it. That is a bad quality of mine, giving unsolicited advice and not taking it for myself. Anyways, I'm a big believer that relationships should more often than not feel very light and fun, but don't throw the whole relationship away just because there's some bumps in the road or ebbs and flows, as I always like to say. You're going to go through struggles. If your relationship is kind of just meh, like that means it's dead. It's boring. I kind of like a little bit of up and down. Like there has to be some excitement. A lot of the times, if things are coming up in a relationship, it's often things that you may be projecting onto the relationship yourself. So say, like I know one thing that I'm doing in my relationship currently is I'm getting very stressed out when my boyfriend is talking about his to-do list and his task and everything he needs to achieve. And sometimes I get into a bad habit of getting stressed out by hearing his list of tasks or achievements because I'm actually projecting onto him that I don't think I'm achieving enough. So I say to him, why does everything need to be achieved? Like, can we just chill and relax? And it's actually more me saying, why am I always working? Why can't I just chill and be okay with it? Why does everything need to be working on something? So when you're in a relationship, if you are finding parts of your partner aggravating or you feel like you're butting heads, take a step back and look internally a little bit more. And I'm not saying this because I'm an expert. It's just something that I'm trying to do a little bit more, and recognizing where my criticism is or my frustration is. It's probably just something that I'm not liking about myself or frustrated about. Another thing I've learned throughout relationships in the past year is communication is truly key. One thing that I use in my relationship, because it goes back to sometimes I'm projecting, is I like to use the sentence. I don't use it often, but I try to, is the sentence of the story I'm telling myself is. And what that does is it allows you not to point fingers on what they're doing wrong, because they're probably actually not doing anything wrong. You're just coming up with this story of what they said meant this, even though it didn't actually mean anything. So when you're explaining your feelings to someone, it's, for this instance, a romantic partner, using the sentence, the story I'm telling myself is, it one, disarms the other person from feeling attacked and for feeling blame putting on them. And it also allows the other person and yourself to realize, okay, I'm actually maybe making this all up in my head. I'm putting a lot more meaning to this than it probably is. And when you open up the conversation that way, what I love about it is it opens the window to vulnerability. It allows you to recognize in yourself, like, hey, I'm getting a lot more upset about this than I should be, that the situation grants. And I'm spiraling and making up so many stories about nothing. And then it allows the other person to understand where all the emotion and frustration is coming from. And it allows you just to level set. A lot of the times arguments are stemming from the stories we're making up in our head, and we're putting so much meaning on something that it isn't. So between relationships being a true mirror into what we need to work on, and then making sure that communication is key and not putting blame on people, those are lessons that I won't say I achieved in the past year, but they're definitely top of mind, and I continue to work on them. Lesson number 5 is a quick one, and it's just to allow things to flow naturally. Don't force anything. Not friendships, not jobs, not even hair ties. I think that's the funny quote, right? Stop forcing things and just let things play out how they were intended to be. How this shows up in my life is mainly with scheduling podcast guests, and it shows up a lot in real estate. So say if I'm reaching out to 5 or 6 or 7 new podcast guests that I want on the show. And you could think about this in terms of job interviews or, I don't know, dates that you're going on, anything. If it's so hard to get maybe a calendar invite scheduled with someone, or maybe a date set, or maybe a job interview scheduled, if it's that hard, it's not meant to be. And it might still be meant to be, but maybe not at this very moment. So what I like to do, whether it's with podcast guests or real estate clients, if I don't feel like they're reciprocating the same amount of effort that I am, I take a step back. I give them the information that they need, whether it's a podcast guest, and I'll say, hey, if you want to book an interview with me or get on the podcast, here is the link to schedule the call. Self-select in. Some guests book right away and I'm talking to them tomorrow. Some guests, I never ever end up hearing from them. And I let it go. I don't follow up with people. Like I might once, but I don't chase people, I guess is the easiest way to say it. And this also shows up a lot in my real estate world. I like to fill my pipeline real estate client-wise because some people will be very receptive. If some people start getting a little bit more quiet, I don't waste time chasing them. It's the simplest way to say it. And instead of wasting so much energy on following up and chasing people and just trying to force things that like aren't happening easily, it allows me to free up time for the clients and the friends and the jobs and whatever you want to put in. It allows itself to flow very naturally and very easily. And it makes life a little bit more effortless. The final lesson of 27 for me is make sure the people you love know. Super simple, but it's something that and I think a lot of us forget sometimes. We assume that the people we love know that we love them, and sometimes we need to tell them more or show them more. It's not going to hurt if we tell them too much, is what I'm trying to say. And obviously, what has happened in the past year has made us all recognize that life is very short. We all work way too much, myself included. We are so focused and self-absorbed sometimes, and we do not spend enough time telling the people we love that we love them. And it seems so simple and silly to remind people of this and to remind myself about this, but it has to get done. People love to be loved, and people want to know that you're thinking about them. And whether that's a simple text or a simple voice note, it doesn't have to be anything crazy, but if you're thinking about someone, just let them know that. I think it would bring a lot of joy to people's lives. I think a lot of us have gone through our own struggles, whether big or small, in the past year, and it's been a whirlwind. Don't diminish the fact that this year has been so hard on everyone in some capacity. And life, like I said, is so short. And at the end of the day, everything we're working on or building towards, it is all so meaningless if we don't have anyone to share it with. So finding that balance can be tough. And I think this is a great segue into giving you a bit of insight into what I'm currently struggling with these days. And the biggest one for me right now is finding balance between building a new career and building a podcast and being more into that entrepreneurial mindset, and still taking the time to catch up with my friends, catch up with my family, giving them any sense of time and energy has been so tough for me. And that actually probably links to kind of why a lot of my friendships have changed in the past year. And a lot of it is probably on me, but it's hard to balance it all when you're switching careers and you're working a lot and you're trying to make something and build something and be successful. And by the time, I'm recording this at 11:30 at night to give you a sense of my schedule these days. And that is not a flex at all by any means. It's honestly probably a better reflection of my time efficiency and a lack thereof. But anyways, I'm on a tangent again. But yeah, you can hear it in my voice. That's one of the biggest things I'm struggling with, is trying to balance still having a social life and keeping up with my friends and family and loved ones in my life, but also still trying to grow a career and build a podcast. So if anyone knows how to balance that at all, let me know, because the nature of quote unquote currently struggling with means I don't have it figured out yet, like at all. And for any of my friends who are listening to this, just know that I'm thinking of you guys literally every day, all day, and being on autopilot in my career, but also just thinking about everyone else because I miss everyone. And it's tough on me, and it's a struggle, and I'm bad at texting back. I'm bad at remembering to call people back, but I just hope everything opens again, so it's a lot easier to just grab a drink and see everyone all at once and feel connected again. Being an extroverted social person, the lack of connection really gets to me sometimes, and I'm sure a lot of people feel the same way. But yeah, I mean, I'm a pretty shitty friend lately. Easiest way to put it, and I'm working on it. I'm trying. It's not going to get better anytime soon, but just to give you some insight that I do care, and it's going to get better, but it's really hard to balance it all for one person. So that's the biggest thing I'm struggling with right now. I think that also links to, honestly, lately I feel I'm racing with the clock at all times. I'm going to bed just constantly thinking about everything that didn't get done. Part of me, I'm such a Taurus sometimes. Part of me just wants to turn off my phone and play a video game. I got Animal Crossing recently and I'm obsessed with it. So that's been a great saver in terms of mental health and just letting me decompress a bit. There's this new TikTok trend going around. It says, don't be surprised if all of a sudden I do, and then it like plays it into the video. And the idea is that people just delete their phone, like delete any kind of remnants into who they are and just disappear onto like a deserted island. And I've never had a TikTok feel so real, because some days I feel that way where I just want to throw it all away and just live on an island where there's no currency, there's no anything. But anyways, that's when I get to like my lowest times of the week where it just all seems very overwhelming. Again, the nature of me currently struggling with this, I don't have it all figured out, so I have no lessons to share. Maybe a year from now or 6 months from now, I'll tell you how to figure it out, but right now I don't have it figured out. And even me saying that is very vulnerable, and I don't say that very often, but trust me, I do not have it figured out. Some things I do, this I do not. Another thing that I am struggling with a lot lately is I'm just taking things so personally. I don't know, maybe there's something astrology going on in the moons, or maybe it's the new age thing, I don't know. But it's so hard for me to not take things so personally sometimes. I'm working on it, and I'm open to any suggestions on how not to. I have this very bad case of extremes of either I care so much and I take everything so personally, or I'm so disengaged and don't give a shit about anything. There's no middle ground, and that's not healthy. So yeah, I often struggle with going back and forth between those. The other thing that overall, and I guess I can probably just start concluding this now because this is a lot longer of an episode than I intended. At first, I was like, oh my God, I don't even know if I could do 10 minutes. And wow, I love to talk. And I realized in this solo episode that I'm glad I didn't become a teacher, because I think I'm going to have a sore throat tomorrow. Like, my throat hurts so much. I haven't talked this long in so long. And if you've made it this far, then thank you. And I hope you gained some value. But the last thing that I'm struggling with a lot is these lockdowns and the pandemic. And I feel like Toronto has been on a lockdown since the very beginning. Please remind me when there was a time when we weren't, because it feels like we've been on lockdown the whole time. And I haven't seen my family in almost 2 years. And being an only child and living away from your family, and even though I have great friends and family here, it's not the same. And yeah, I want to go home, but I can't. But I want to very soon. And yeah, and I find anything I'm struggling with lately, probably all stems from this about, honestly, if I think too much about how much I miss home, it'll really get to me. I know Christmas was really hard for me. I I mean, it's May. I'd be going home next month for like another trip, and knowing that I'm not is really getting to me. And I find to not think about all of that pain, I work a lot. And I think even just like working so much that I don't get to see my friends, it's a bad cycle. And again, working this much is not a flex. It's really stemming from numbing the pain of these pandemics and lockdowns and everything that's going on in the world, and how everything feels unfair, and not being able to see anyone we want to see, and feeling like we're trapped. It's, trust me, I go through these wave of emotions probably every single day. But by Friday I'm ready to explode. But anyways, I think a therapist would have a field day with this. This episode feels a little bit like therapy to me, and it feels a little therapeutic. But all to say, yeah, the main thing I'm currently struggling with lately is just feeling like these lockdowns are never ending. So I got my vaccine, so I feel good about that. I feel hopeful, but it's hard. It's, yeah, just the easiest way to say it. So I guess I could conclude that here. I feel like I've given a lot tonight in this episode. I feel anytime I listen to podcasts or therapy stuff, they're always like journal. And I feel like this was a lot more therapeutic than journaling. And I'm glad I'm the only one in the house. So no one had to listen to this, and people who listen to it will be choosing to when it's an edited episode. But right now it feels very raw. So those were the 6 main lessons I learned in the age of 27, along with a few things that I'm currently struggling with. To give you a recap of everything, of my main lessons, just to leave you all remembering what they were. Lesson 1, doors close so better doors will open. Lesson 2, people in your life will come and go. Those who are meant to stay will stay, and it will be so effortless. Lesson number 3, success doesn't always mean hard work. Success should come easy. Lesson 4, relationships are a true mirror into what you need to work on. Lesson 5, let things flow naturally. Don't force anything. Friendships, jobs, nothing. Stop forcing it. And lesson 6, make sure that the people that you love in your life know that you love them. Life is too short not to be loving on the people that we love and reminding them daily. Thank you so much for everyone who tuned into this episode and got a real deep glimpse. Not even a glimpse, that's such a oxymoron, but yeah, got a real good feel of what's kind of went down in my life in the last year, and also what I'm still struggling with. And I hope anything that I said today really touched you. And if it did, let me know. And if you like these kind of episodes, I'm happy to do them. If it's not you, it's someone else going to be listening on a phone call. So thank you again for listening. I hope to see you back next week. Bye.